Welcome to the second photo exhibition here. Through the Lost Heritage photo exhibition, we came to understand the heritage of Korea. And we also learned that we still have a legacy left. North Korea. The very work of obscuring our mountains and rivers and liberating our compatriots in the North remains. In this photo exhibition, we will find the remaining legacy in details. Let's take a step together with expectation and hopes. In the middle of a quiet city, Pyongyang, a red torch stands tall over the Kamdaeryong River. At first glance, it seems to be a torch, but it is actually a sculpture operated by electricity. The tower, which does not go out and colors the Daeryong River 365 days a year, is the world's tallest stone pagoda built by the North Korean Authority to represent the idea of Juche, North Korea's ruling ideology. Since the torch at the top of the tower represents the leader, in the events of power outage, the person in charge will be severely punished for damaging the prestige of the party. Cities around the tower often experience power outages due to insufficient power supply, but the torches of this tower never go out. Two security guards are waiting for the bus to pass by in broad daylight. At this point, all passengers on the bus can get back into the car only after taking out all their luggage and censoring it. In North Korea, the only country in the world that implements pass system, there are dozens of checkpoints in each village, and you can barely reach your destination only by passing through them. It's a picture that looks peaceful, but is full of fear and oppression. There is a triangular building towering in the middle of downtown Pyongyang. The huge pyramid-shaped building among the tiny buildings even gives up strange feelings. What's surprising is the interior of this huge building is empty. Ryugyong Hotel, with 3,000 rooms, was the world's largest and tallest building. But construction suddenly stopped in 1989 and has remained incomplete for more than 30 years. Ironically, unlike the desolate interior, a spectacular LED lighting show is held every night on the exterior wall of the building with parades praising the North Korean regime. All sizzle and no steak, just as it is colorful on the outside but without food inside. Ryugyong Hotel, a representative landmark of North Korea, seems to reflect the appearance of North Korea, which is only empty. Pyongyang is the thoroughly planned city to promote the North Korean system to the outside world. So if foreigners visit Pyongyang, they can only see what the North Korean authorities want to show according to a well-organized schedule. However, foreign writers who visited North Korea on that day captured the outside of the scenario planned by the government. For Kim Il-sung's birthday parade, I saw people shaming behind countless people training under the scorching sun. Guys assigned to accompany all visitors sweat. They are often embarrassed and nervous when they encounter scenes different from authorities' scenarios, such as scenes behind the stage where people are not laughing, lazy, or struggling with labor. North Korea is a society of dead poets that have already festered between residents who strive hard to have a human rights avoiding from the civilians and the government that holds a lifeline of residents harder to maintain the system. It's a picture of a festival in North Korea. Tens of thousands of people are often seen in North Korea at colorful group parades and military review held under oppression. In order to be mobilized for numerous events such as the birthday of the three dictator Kims, the founding date of the People's Army, and the anniversary of the founding of the party, North Koreans prepare for the next event after 1 year. If you are not actively participating in the events or looking exhausted in your expression or gesture, you are considered an impurity who does not agree the party. You should do your best to smile and move. It looks like pleasant gesture, but it's a life-threatening gesture. A man stopped on his way and is reading a poem about Juche ideology. This is not the only hymn engraved red on the rock. The young man is standing and staring at the phrase he has seen every day for the rest of his life for some reason today. Shine over the word, the Juche ideology. What is this young man thinking when he sees the red letters in this land? Where even his thoughts are not his own? Perhaps the desperate conflict between the ideas that North Koreans have already learned since birth and the gradually revealed truth has begun in the minds of North Koreans. North Korea, a country full of contradiction, has looked its border tightly to maintain socialist system and only shows its intended appearance without showing any internal reality. Only the voice of a surviving person inside and the voice of a person outside can peel up the truth of North Korea. On August 15, 1945, the time of Kairos reached the Korean peninsula. The independence of the country was achieved at an unexpected time. The sound of Korea's cheer resonated all over the country. All the people, regardless of rich and poor, enjoyed the joy of liberation, and compatriots scattered abroad also went home with an emotional step. When the day comes, the day they've been waiting for has finally arrived. The people gathered on the street vowed not to lose their country, the independent Korea, which was restored again. Before liberation, the next generation of Joseon dynasty worshiped at the Joseon Shrine in Namsan Mountain. This is when the Korean peninsula was at the economically darkest era. At the time of liberation, there were 1,141 shrines in Joseon. The shrines that had been bothering Korea so much all collapsed at the same time as Korea's independence. In addition, about 20 leaders who had been imprisoned for refusing to worship until the end were released from prison. A new wind blew. It's peace now. The time for national recovery seemed to have come. Even though the Japanese military declared surrender on August 15, 1945, the Soviet Union advanced to the Korean peninsula with the aim of communizing the entire East Asia. The United States set the 38th parallel and prevented Soviet troops from advancing, fearing that the entire East Asia will be communized.
Finally, based on the 38th parallel, the capitalist system was established in the south part, and the communist system was established in the north part. Actually, the 38th parallel was a just temporary line used for the division of military operations. But because of the Soviet Union's ambition to communize all the world, it has become a permanent division line in Korea, and it became the most tragic symbol for our nation.
This is a picture of crowds welcoming Soviet troops when they entered Pyongyang after 38th parallel was drowned. In his arrival speech in Pyongyang, General Chischakov of the Soviet army stressed that they came to Korea as liberators, not as conquerors, and that they would not impose their order, that the Korean people were the owner of this country. The North Koreans shouted for the liberator of the people. Stalin and all ages came out to the streets to greet the Soviet army. North Korean compatriots believed that utopia of the Republic of Korea would come through the Soviet Union. By November of that year, 4,000 Soviet troops had established a police body with only North Korea as its territory. In fact, a new government was already being established under Soviet control in North Korea. Farmers, who had been distributed free of charge, confiscated land or cultivating the land. It was a day of joy and delight for some and day of tears for others at the same time. Those who were distributed the land free of charge shed tears of emotion, and the families of numerous landlords and rich farmers who were helplessly deprived of the land overnight had to shed tears of resentment. Rebellious landlords were relentlessly confiscated and forced to migrate. The North Korean Provisional People's Committee, established in the north of the 38th parallel, served as the North government until 1948 under the control of the Soviet forces. Through this committee, land reform was carried out under the principle of free confiscation and free distribution, nationalization of railroads, transportation, electricity, and banks, and it forced the people into coercive control. The Soviet military government and Kim Il-sung said they will guarantee the sovereignty of the people, but they defined those who opposed their idea as reactionaries and banned religious activities because they were also reactionary activities. The northern part of the Korean peninsula was so deeply oppressed under the control of communists. Kim Il-sung appears to be taking a commemorate photo with two key Soviet positioning during the Soviet Welcome Civic Conference held at Morangbong Stadium in Pyongyang. Just before the civic competition, Kim Il-sung was awarded the Order of Merit by the Soviet Union and suddenly began to be called a general instead of a captain. Lieutenant Melkler, who was in charge of Soviet intelligence and political maneuvering to touch Kim Il-sung medal on his chest, has been in charge of guarding Kim Il-sung as popular political leader for more than a year since his presence in Pyongyang. Kim Il-sung, who was delegated the sovereignty of the whole country, began to thoroughly control the basic privacy of the people under the ideology that socialism must win. Unlike North Korea, where the Soviet Union was stationed, U.S. troops entered South Korea after liberation. The President Syngman Rhee, who was campaigning for independence in the United States, also returned to Korea. As soon as he arrived, he ran to the square in front of Seoul City Hall with the proud smile that cannot hide the joy of independence of his country. After returning home, President Syngman Rhee declared war on the Red forces on the Korean peninsula under the title, "My Position on the Communist Party." Everyone can see the Communist Party destroying the country, threatening its kind, using the military to loot property, manipulate the so-called republic to slave the people, and fulfill their self-interest. Syngman Rhee claimed that the Communist Party is an enemy and destroyer that can never cooperate. If this generation fails to solve this problem, the country will be divided into two pieces, warning that it will not be able to escape disaster and eventually return to a position belonging to another country. Originally, the UN General Assembly tried to hold a general election on Korean Peninsula, but the Soviet army, which dominated the 38th parallel, did not open the door to the north for fear of losing power. Eventually, they decided to establish an independent government by election only in possible areas. The picture shows South Korea's first parliamentary general election. Ordinary, equal, direct, and secret voting were held for the first time in Korean history. Unlike many countries that gave only men the right to vote for a while, South Korea had both men and women the right to vote from the beginning. Both women and farmers who cultivated the fields came and became the owners of this country. Expectation and aspiration for the new country turned out to be high turnout of 95.5%. Thus, the Republic of Korea has become the only legal government on the Korean peninsula that has been officially approved by the UN General Assembly. Meanwhile, the North Korean People's Committee held Soviet-style black and white election across the North Korea. In the white ballot box, if you approve of a single candidate, if you disagree, put the ballot in the black ballot box. This voting method is still continuing in North Korea. If you approve of a single candidate, you are supposed to put the ballot in the ballot box as it is. And if you are opposite, you are supposed to enter the ballot box and mark your position and put it in the ballot box. So opposing the candidate is a life risking. Also, you have to risk your life not to attend the vote. The results are natural. With 100% turnout and 100% vote in favor, Kim Il-sung became the official first cabinet prime minister of North Korean regime, and the Soviet government officially approved it. After the two regimes were established in South and North, Kim Il-sung planned to color the entire Korean peninsula with communism. The picture shows North Korea's Kim Il-sung visiting the Soviet Union for approval of the invasion of South Korea. The leaders of South Korea and North Korea said it was a temporary situation and that they will ultimately achieve unification with the power of each force. Most of the people were relieved that this time will not be long. but that's when it broke the expectation of the whole nation. North Korea started a war, saying it would collapse its opponent by force and achieve enemy reunification. That is Communist Korean Peninsula. 2 years before the war, Kim Il-sung increased his troops to maximum and modernized his weapons based on Soviet support. With the consent of China and the Soviet Union, the North Korean military began to advance to Seoul without notice in the early morning of June 25, 1950. The war brought a great shock and sadness to each other. This picture shows Cheonggang-no Street, Seoul, destroyed by bombing during the Korean War. You can see the desperate situation at the time from appearance of women and children looking for food and money even in ruins. Shincheon Ham-seok-kun evaluated the Korean War as a fight that caused the country to become ashes and corpses. A total of 1.5 million casualties, 3.6 million injuries, and more than 10 million separated families occurred. More than 35,000 children were thrown away after losing their father and mother. There was no way to help them, so the Korean government has sent their children to various countries around the world for adoption. As the country was torn, numerous families were torn north and south. Both South and North Korea have returned to state of loss of all hope. The war, which began by the North Korean People's Army's artillery, ended with signs standing one by one in the middle of the Korean peninsula. After independence, the Republic of Korea dreamed of the Korean peninsula as a liberal democratic country. But those with plans of communism interfered with the founding of the country and eventually caused the worst war in Korean history. The Korean peninsula, which has a broken waist, is still mourning. After the war, South Korea began to establish a post-war state again, led by President Syngman Rhee. The state has given political autonomy by protecting the property acquired by the people through their own labor. Naturally, people become diligent. The ground has become fertile. People's spaces are starting to come alive. The country slowly began to stand up. This picture is a picture of the Semaul movement in the 1960s. The Korean people have potential. The 485-kilometer highway was built in 2.5 years. Nuclear power development, which said it would take 20 years, was finished in 8 years. The energy of the whole nation to live well under a system that guarantees individual freedom and possession has led individuals, families, and countries to live again. Immediately after the end of the Korean War, the situation in North was better in every way than in South Korea. Not only the economy, but also the population and the public support for the Kim Il-sung regime has also soared. However, the North Korean regime tightly closed the country along the border, held the people in their hands, and thoroughly blocked exchanges with outside the world. For forces approaching from outside to open the door, they threatened with missile and wars, further strengthening borders such as Prison Gate. After the war and division, Kim Il-sung, who dominated the North Korean region and became a god of people himself beyond a simple dictator, created his empire in a completely closed society. A dictator defiled as a solar god inherited 3 generations, and the only thing North Korean residents allow on this land is to worship 3 generations of dictators. In this way, an unprecedented huge prison has been built around the world. The child's gesture, which is in the midst of a game of attacking the US military with a gun, is full of playfulness. The North Korean regime does not mention at all the fact that Korean War broke out due to their invasion from North Korea, but teaches that the Korean peninsula was divided in half because of the United States, allowing them to look at foreign powers as a concept of good and evil. The North Korean regime only injects limited information into people from birth to maintain a system in which a few monopolize power. Schools, where children should learn to dream and express freely, teach idolization of the Kim's family, as well as distortion of history and hatred of foreign powers. Children with different colorful and shiny color melt into color of black and white, which is what the authorities are allowed to do and what they are against. This is daily village in North Korea. Even in modern society in the 21st century, there are still chimneys from house to house. What is neighbor like for North Koreans? North Koreans gather once a week on a small scale to reflect their actions and criticize other actions to see if there is anything against the party. In addition, through the number 5 system, every move of neighboring residents is monitored, focusing on monitored place anonymously per 5 households. It has become a daily routine for me to file a complaint against others to leave, so that more than 50% of North Koreans have experienced accusing or selling neighbors. Even if your parents die because there is nothing to eat, you can't stop feeling your festering stomach even if all your family disappears and you are left alone. When you can find food even if you walk around the street, you sometimes cross the deadline like thin ice and cross over to China. They are now crossing the diagonal for survival, feeling that they might die for starving here or for being discovered crossing the border. Can a person's life be priced? Film in China in 2004. The women stand in front of men they have never seen before with their own price tags. He risked his life to cross the border thinking about his children and family, but failed to enter Korea from China, eventually being sold to businesses and rural areas as forced marriages. Will a person's life and a person's value be like this? Even if they are not sold, it's common for Chinese public security to arrest them to send back to North Korea and get forced abortion or lose their lives. We are refugees. Please protect us and send us to Embassy of the Republic of Korea. This is a note prepared to hand over when a North Korean defector from China through Mongolia meets a broker. There's no safe route in any of the various routes of defection. The route from Mongolia to South Korea is the route of death to cross the Gobi Desert, Asia's largest desert. This is because if you get lost in a desert without milestone, you will suffer from scorching heat during the day and the bone-cutting cold at night eventually die. However, the struggle for freedom cannot be stopped. Even if they lose their lives, the struggle to find freedom that is more important than their lives continues at this moment. No matter how solid a lie is, it will collapse someday. If it is not truth, just as the more you try to squeeze sand, the more sand drops between the fingers. The more the government squeezes the freedom of the people, the more people lose trust in the government. And culture outside the border is gradually flowing through the broken cracks. This is not because the government has implemented an open policy, but because of the North Koreans' own reform and constant tapping outside. This is the appearance of North Koreans buying and selling goods at stalls near Paju, Gyeonggi-do. During the Hardship March, when 3 million people starved to death, there were a line of people fleeing North Korea to find food, not to starve to death. And those left within the border sold their things one by one to survive. And this is how Jangmadang, the free marketplace, was started. Recently, there has been a joke among residents that the marketplace is the ruling party and the Korean Workers' Party is the opposition party. The North Korean regime has already turned out to be a vain existence within the borders they have drawn. New leaves are gradually emerging in North Korea, the land of oppression. The previous generation, which was loyal to the party, has passed, and a new generation is taking place. The generation who has no memory of receiving anything from the state now accounts for more than 40% of North Korea's population. The place where they were fed and safe were the marketplace and the parents who did business in the marketplace, not the state. The conflicts have begun between the regime, which forces only unconditional loyalty and dedication, nevertheless, how less it cares the people and this new generation. These are the footprints of North Korean defectors on the Yalu River. The number of North Korean defectors, which has soared since the late 1990s, has plummeted since 2019 due to COVID-19. Ironically, however, the rate of defection from young students to young people in their 20s and 30s is increasing. Defecting from North Korea in their 40s, which previously accounted for majority, was an escape to make a living to feed their families. However, the current defection of North Korea in their 20s is an escape as a struggle for freedom. Freedom taken on the river, heading outward and toward the world are clear.
Because the North Korean government instructs people only their idea from their birth, the residents need information from outside of North Korea to have a new ideas other than brainwashed ideas. The propaganda leaflets, also known as Bibora, is the only medium that makes them look their world from a different perspective.
In South Korea, flying flyer has been banned since 2020, but this is the only light that can inform the truth to the North Koreans living in the midst of endless paradoxes and the unchanging truth. This is the appearance of Chinese ship openly violating the UN sanction against North Korea and shipping coal from a North Korean port. Sanctions against North Korea continue to pressure the North Korean government. In order for birds to break eggs and come out, there must be an effort to break the shell either inside and outside. Efforts to open the North Korean door outside continue to be attempted, and constant tapping outside will eventually serve as a channel for pressing the North Korean government and rescuing its citizens. The inside of North Korea is constantly wriggling. In response to these changes, the North Korean government is further curbing the lives and freedoms of its citizens and forcing them to be loyal to the authorities. North Korea's system is a system that never changes. The pain will end only when the regime that suppresses freedom and life collapses rather than expecting North Korea's own change. North Korean camps, which seem to be gradually decreasing in number, have recently expanded their facilities and increased the number of people present. Against sanctions against North Korea, camps are also moved to places that are not captured by satellites. As a means of controlling the shaken public sentiment and ideas, many laws are enacted more than necessary, and residents are detained in camps whenever they violate these laws. Some say that North Korea is gradually on an open route, but it is only show-up measure to show the outside, and the shadow of death throughout the country is permeating deeper into places that are less visible. The faces of young women dressed beautifully in hanbok show unknown expressions. The wind of Korean wave that hit the world crossed the truce line and reached North Korea. But North Korean young people cannot enjoy even this to their own heart's content. A high school student in North Korea who purchased and watched the Korean drama was sentenced to a life imprisonment. And a resident who brought in and sold USB from China was sentenced to shooting. Death and sacrifice are being forced by indiscriminate crackdowns and controls by authorities to prevent changes in the thoughts of the curious younger generation. Feeling that the regime is collapsing from the younger generation, the North Korean government is providing through ideology education to young people again. The Youth Alliance of 5 million members, where all North Korean young people and students must join, must defend the North Korean regime's policies and are forced to play a role promoting them to the residents. The endless cries of the residents did not serve as an opportunity to open the door to the North Korean regime, but became a promoter that holds people's life even stronger in the grip. All routes to and from North Korea have been blocked as the border blockade to prevent the spread of COVID-19 has been over 2 years. North Koreans, whose way to make a living is by selling goods imported from outside to the market, are simply worried about their survival. Various relief supplies and support from relief organizations in the international community are also tied to ports throughout Chinese border without crossing the North Korean border. Although there are many swallows who died in the construction site after the family died due to the difficult economy for the border blockade, residents shout that it is worse than the march of hardship. His silent screams to the authorities. Granting preferential treatment to the ruling class is to ensure that they do not rebel against the socialist system and the oppression of the party, though they know the truth. But this privilege does not mean freedom. The privileged are still trapped in the authorities through a civilian system. As a result, a contradictory society is maintaining that North Korean executive pretend to be loyal to the government and the Juche ideology on the outside, but actually try to avoid the civilians to keep the privileges inside. No matter how much you shout and call inside, North Korea's sanctions never change. The pain will end only when the regime that suppresses freedom and life collapses rather than expecting North Korea's own change. There is a country with half of territory, people, and sovereignty. We ran toward our own path, forgetting the breaking up. Because we have a mission to achieve as one, eventually we will meet again. When we walk toward each other again, the recovery is not a faint dream, but a near future. It's time for us to open the present door